In small American towns, people like to believe life is simple, predictable, safe. But every so often, there are places where something else lingers, something older, something darker, that doesn't let go. The first thing people always mention is the silence. Not the kind of quiet that comes with a sleepy little town, but the heavy silence that presses on your chest, the kind that feels alive. When I first drove into Ashford, I noticed it immediately. The streets looked like every other small town in America, gas station, diner, hardware store, but the air carried something different. People walked quickly, heads down, as if afraid to linger outside too long. I'd come to Ashford for work. I'm a freelance journalist, chasing stories that never make the headlines, but live in whispers and rumors. A friend of mine told me about a string of deaths in Ashford, bizarre accidents, young people gone without warning, and families that refused to talk. At first glance, it sounded like urban legend material, but the way my friend spoke, like he was warning me rather than pitching me, stuck in my head. On my first night, I checked into the only motel, run by an older couple who smiled politely, but said little. The woman handed me my room key and muttered something under her breath that I couldn't catch. Her husband shot her a sharp look and she went quiet. That silence again. Later, I walked down Main Street. Most of the shops were closed by 9, except the diner. I slipped inside, ordered coffee, and struck up a conversation with the waitress, a young woman named Anna. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "People don't like strangers here," she said after I told her what I was doing. "Not because you're from outside, but because, well, this place doesn't forgive curiosity." I asked what she meant, but she only shook her head. When I pressed, she leaned closer and whispered, "You'll hear it soon enough." At night. That night I left my window cracked open, half expecting the usual small-town noises. Dogs barking, a train in the distance, maybe a truck rolling down the highway. But at 2:17 a.m., I woke to something else. It wasn't a sound exactly. It was more like a vibration in the air, low and steady, rising and falling like a chant. I sat up in bed, straining my ears. The motel's clock ticked, but beneath it was that hum, faint, coming from the woods beyond the parking lot. Curiosity got the better of me. I slipped on my jacket, grabbed my phone for light and stepped outside. The air was cold, colder than it should have been in late September. My breath clouded in front of me. The sound was clearer now, layered voices murmuring in no language I understood. I walked toward the tree line, my sneakers crunching gravel. Every step closer made the noise sharper, angrier, until I swore I could feel it inside my chest. Just as I reached the first row of trees, the sound stopped. Not faded, stopped. The silence that followed was so complete, it made my ears ring. I stood frozen, scanning the dark. That's when I saw it. Someone or something standing just beyond the trees, tall, motionless, with eyes that reflected my phone's light like an animal's. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet, until I reached the safety of the motel lot. When I looked again, the figure was gone. Back inside my room, I locked the door and pulled the curtains shut. My heart wouldn't slow down. No matter how many times I told myself it was just a trick of the dark, but I knew what I saw. And the worst part, the next morning, when I mentioned the woods to Anna at the diner, she didn't look surprised. She just nodded and whispered, "Now it started for you too." If you enjoy stories that feel real, filled with mystery, fear, and the unknown, then stay with us. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next terrifying chapter. It means a lot, and it helps us keep telling these stories. The morning after that night in the woods, I couldn't shake the image of those eyes staring back at me. I kept replaying it, trying to convince myself it was just some animal caught in my phone's glow. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I'd seen the shape, It was too tall, too still, too human. At the diner, Anna slid me a coffee before I even asked. She didn't smile. She just said, "Rough night." When I didn't answer, she leaned closer. "Don't go looking for it again. That's how it spreads." Her words clung to me. I asked her what she meant by it, but she looked over her shoulder at the cook, an older man who was listening too closely, and fell silent. I could tell she wanted to say more, but fear sealed her lips. The rest of the day, I wandered through town, trying to blend in. Ashford wasn't big, maybe 3,000 people. Old brick buildings lined the main street, many empty or boarded up. I stopped into the library, a squat brick building that smelled of mildew and dust. The librarian, a grey-haired man with trembling hands, froze when I asked about the town's history. "You don't want to know that," he muttered. "Some things are better buried." But I insisted. After a long pause, he disappeared into the back and returned with a brittle binder full of newspaper clippings. Some pages were so yellow they crumbled at the edges. The earliest article was from 1894. A group of settlers vanished from Ashford without explanation. The story said their houses were found intact, meals still on the table, but not a single body left behind. Locals at the time called it the Hollowing. The name made my skin crawl. As the decades passed, more strange things filled the binder. Whole families gone overnight, children walking into the woods and never coming back. A preacher in the 1930s who claimed the town was cursed and tried to burn the forest down. He was found dead in his church before he could strike the match. The sheriff called it a heart attack, but the photo of his twisted body suggested otherwise. When I left the library, the sun was dipping low. The air felt colder again, unnaturally so. And though the street looked empty, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. That night I decided to test Anna's warning. I left my window shut tight, but just after 2 a.m. I heard it again. The hum, the chant, the vibrating noise that seemed to pulse inside my skull. Louder this time. My body felt pinned to the bed. Then came the scratching. At first faint, like a branch brushing against the glass, then stronger, sharper, deliberate. Something or someone was clawing at my window. I forced myself to sit up. Through the thin curtain I saw a silhouette, tall, hunched, its head tilting at an unnatural angle as it dragged its nails across the glass. My throat closed up. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my chest. In a burst of panic, I grabbed the lamp and slammed it against the wall, shattering the bulb and plunging the room into darkness. When I pulled back the curtain, the figure was gone. Only streaks remained on the outside of the glass, long, deep scratches that hadn't been there before. Sleep was impossible after that. I sat awake until dawn, staring at the window, waiting for something else to happen. The next morning, I went back to the diner. Anna looked at me and without a word slid into the booth across from me. Her hands shook as she lit a cigarette, even though the no smoking sign hung right above us. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. I nodded. She took a long drag, exhaled smoke and said, "It doesn't come for everyone, only for the ones who listen. Once you've heard the chanting, you're marked, and it won't stop, not until it gets what it wants." Her eyes filled with tears, though her voice never broke. "I lost my brother to it last year, same way you heard it. First the hum, then the scratching, then the eyes in the trees. He followed them one night, we never found him. Just his shoes, left at the edge of the woods. I felt cold all over. My hands trembled as I gripped the coffee mug. "What does it want?" I asked. Anna stared at me for a long time before answering. "It wants us to remember. This town, it's feeding something, and it doesn't let go." She stubbed out her cigarette and stood up. "You should leave before it's too late." But something in her eyes told me she didn't really believe I could. Leaving wasn't as simple as Anna made it sound. I told myself I'd pack my bag, check out of the motel, and drive until Ashford was nothing but a bad memory. But the truth was, I couldn't. Something in me needed to understand what was happening here. Journalists chase stories, but this felt like more than a story. It felt personal now. Still, I tried. I stuffed my clothes into my duffel and headed out to my car. The morning was crisp, the sky a washed-out gray. When I turned the key, the engine sputtered, coughed, and died. I tried again. Nothing. The third time, the starter didn't even click. Cursing, I popped the hood, but everything looked fine. Too fine. It was like the parts had been scrubbed, brand new but lifeless, as if the car had never truly been mine. I slammed the hood down, shaking. Inside the motel office, I told the old man at the desk about my car trouble. He only shrugged. "Happens all the time," he said, his voice flat. "People try to leave, their cars don't start." The way he said it, casual, almost bored, made my stomach twist. He didn't even offer to call a mechanic. "Then how do people get out?" I asked. His eyes slid to his wife, who was folding laundry in the corner. She muttered something again, that same low whisper from my first night, but I still couldn't catch the words. The old man frowned at her and turned back to me. "Some don't," he said. I walked out before he could explain. That afternoon, I decided to retrace my steps to the woods. It was reckless, but I had to know if what I saw was real. The trees loomed tall and black, even in daylight. A faint smell of rot hung in the air, though no animals or fallen branches were visible. I found the spot where I'd stopped 2 nights earlier, where the humming had cut off and the figure had stood. The ground there looked wrong. The soil was darker, wetter, though it hadn't rained in days. Kneeling down, I pressed my hand into it. Cold, too cold for sunlit earth. And then I saw them. Shoes. A pair of muddy sneakers half buried in the dirt. Anna's words came back to me instantly, her brother's shoes, left at the edge of the woods. My chest tightened. Were these his or someone else's? Before I could pick them up, I heard movement deeper in the trees. Not footsteps exactly, but something dragging, something heavy. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. My legs felt rooted. The dragging sound grew closer. I turned, scanning the shadows, and then, between 2 oaks, I saw a figure. Tall, hunched, swaying as if pulled by invisible strings. Its face was hidden in the dark, but its hands, long, pale, with too many fingers, reached toward the ground, clawing through leaves as it staggered forward. I bolted. Branches tore at my arms and face as I stumbled back onto the road. My heart slammed in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. When I finally dared to look back, the woods were still. Empty. But I knew it had followed me. Back at the diner, I found Anna again. She saw my face, pale and wild, and didn't even ask what happened. She just whispered, "You shouldn't have gone back." I told her about the shoes, the figure, the dragging. Her lips trembled as she said, "It's showing itself to you faster than I thought. It wants you, maybe because you're not from here." "Why not you?" I asked, desperate. Her voice cracked then. "It already took something from me. Maybe that's enough for now. Maybe it's waiting for me to pay again." The way she said it chilled me to the bone, like she knew this was a debt everyone in Ashford carried, sooner or later. That night, I tried not to sleep. I sat in the motel chair, lamp on, staring at the window. But sometime after 3, exhaustion won. My eyes closed for just a moment, and when I opened them again, the lamp was off. I was in total darkness. The hum filled the room, deafening now, like a swarm of voices pressing against the walls. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. When I grabbed it, the screen lit up, but there was no signal, just one message. It wasn't from a number. No contact, no sender, only 3 words glowing on the screen. "Don't look outside." I froze when I saw the message on my phone. "Don't look outside." My first thought was that it had to be a prank, but who in this town would bother? My second thought, the one that made my blood run cold, was that someone or something knew exactly where I was at that moment. The humming grew louder. The walls seemed to vibrate with it, a low, relentless drone that made the air feel heavy in my lungs. Every instinct screamed at me to check the window, to see what was there. But the message burned in my mind. I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles ached. Slowly, I slid off the chair and crawled to the corner farthest from the window. I pressed my back against the wall, every muscle tense. The scratching came next, long, deliberate strokes across the glass. Whatever was out there wanted me to look. My eyes burned with tears I didn't want to shed. Then the scratching stopped. Silence, thick and suffocating. I held my breath. A faint knock followed, not on the door, on the glass. 3 sharp taps. I bit down on my hand to keep from screaming. The phone vibrated again. Another message appeared. Same sender, none. Same eerie glow on the screen. It knows you're awake. Something inside me broke then. I leapt from the corner, grabbed my duffel and ran out the door. I didn't care what time it was or who saw me. The motel hallway stretched long and empty, the buzz of the overhead lights flickering as I passed. I reached the lobby, but no one was at the desk. The old couple's chairs were empty, their half-finished cups of coffee still steaming. Outside, the town was silent. Too silent. Not even the chirp of crickets or the bark of a distant dog. Just the soft crunch of my sneakers on gravel as I sprinted toward the diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly, but inside the booths were empty, the counter abandoned. A pot of coffee hissed on the warmer, boiling itself down to nothing. "Anna?" I called out, my voice cracking. No answer. The phone buzzed again. My hand shook as I lifted it. A third message. "Stop running." I nearly dropped the phone. My breath came fast, ragged. The air around me felt wrong, thick and heavy, pressing in. I turned in a slow circle, heart pounding, and then I saw them. Figures, dozens of them, standing at the far end of Main Street. Pale shapes, motionless. They weren't walking toward me, not yet, just watching. I backed into the diner, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands fumbled for the blinds, pulling them down, blocking their gaze. The humming began again, faint at first, then louder, pulsing through the glass. That's when I heard a voice. "Over here!" I spun around. Anna was crouched behind the counter, her face pale and drawn, eyes wide with fear. She motioned me down. I slid beside her, gasping for breath. "You shouldn't be out here," she whispered. "They were at the motel," I hissed back, scratching at my window. "They knew I was awake." "I told you," she cut me off, her voice trembling. "Once you've heard it, you're marked. You can't escape it now." I stared at her, desperate. "Then what do we do?" She swallowed hard. "We don't run. We wait, and we pray it doesn't choose us tonight." We sat there together in silence, the humming rising outside, rattling the windows. I dared a glance at my phone again. The screen was black this time, dead. No messages, no light. Anna squeezed her eyes shut, muttering something under her breath. Maybe a prayer, maybe just words to keep herself from breaking. Then, through the glass, I heard it. My name, clear, distinct, in a voice that wasn't mine, wasn't Anna's. A voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It spoke again, louder this time, dragging my name into the air like a hook sinking into flesh. Anna's grip tightened on my arm. Her nails dug into my skin as she whispered, "Don't answer. No matter what, don't answer it." But the sound of my own name echoing through the empty street clawed at my sanity. It wanted me, it knew me, and God help me, a part of me wanted to answer back. We stayed crouched behind the diner counter until the first hint of daylight crept through the blinds. The humming stopped with the sunrise, like someone had flicked off a switch. My body ached from tension, my throat raw from holding back screams. When the light finally filled the room, Anna released my arm and whispered, "For now, we're safe." I wanted to believe her, but the word safe didn't belong in Ashford, not anymore. When we stepped outside, the street was empty. No figures, no pale shapes, no sign of the horror that had filled the night. The only evidence was the faint claw marks scratched into the glass of the diner's front window. "Why doesn't anyone talk about this?" I demanded. "Why do the people here just pretend it's normal?" Anna lit another cigarette, her hands trembling as she cupped the flame. "Because we learned a long time ago that talking about it makes it stronger. That's what my grandmother used to say, anyway. You keep your head down, you live your life, and you hope it passes over you. But when someone starts digging, asking questions..." She looked at me, her eyes tired and hollow. "It notices." Guilt hit me like a hammer. I was the outsider, the one who came here poking around. Maybe I had stirred it up again. "Then why help me?" I asked quietly. Her lips trembled around the cigarette. "Because I couldn't help my brother." The weight of her words hung between us. Later that day, I tried again to leave town. Not by car this time, on foot. I slung my duffel over my shoulder and walked down the empty highway, determined to get as far away from Ashford as I could. For hours, I followed the cracked asphalt, the forest pressing close on both sides. The sun was bright overhead, but the silence never lifted. Not a bird, not a rustle of leaves. Just my footsteps. Around noon, a car appeared in the distance. Relief surged through me. I waved my arms, desperate for them to stop. The old pickup slowed, dust swirling as it pulled over. The driver was a man in his 60s, face tanned and wrinkled. He looked me up and down, then said, "Where you headed?" "Anywhere but here," I said, breathless. His eyes flicked to the trees, then back to me. He didn't smile. "Get in." I climbed into the passenger seat, clutching my bag. For a while we drove in silence. The road stretched on, mile after mile, the trees blurring past. I kept glancing at the dashboard clock. 10 minutes, 20, 30, but when I looked out the window, my stomach dropped. We were still in Ashford. The same gas station slid past, the same boarded-up shop fronts, the same diner. My chest tightened. You didn't turn around, did you?" The old man gripped the wheel tighter. His knuckles were white. "You can't leave, not once it's chosen you." I stared at him, horrified. "Then why pick me up?" His voice cracked as he whispered, "Because I remember what it was like the first time, and I can't stand to see another soul try and fail alone." Before I could respond, the truck shuddered violently. The engine roared, then died, coasting us to a stop in front of the motel. My motel. The old man slammed his fist against the steering wheel. "Damn thing never lets go," he muttered, tears shining in his eyes. I stumbled out, shaking, my legs barely holding me. The motel sign flickered above, buzzing like an insect. The old couple was standing outside now, as if they had been waiting for me. Their expressions were grim, resigned. "You see now," the old man said, his voice flat. "You're part of it." That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat on the bed with the curtains closed tight, waiting for the inevitable. My phone lay silent on the nightstand, screen black. At 2:17 a.m., the humming returned. This time, it didn't stop at the walls. It seeped inside, vibrating through the floorboards, through my bones. My vision blurred, my ears rang. And then the phone lit up again. One new message: "Open the door." The words on the phone screen pulsed like they were alive. "Open the door." My whole body went rigid. I dropped the phone onto the carpet, but the glow didn't fade. It just stayed there, bright and waiting, as if mocking my fear. The humming rattled the room. The light fixture above flickered, buzzing like angry bees. My duffel bag slid a few inches across the floor, as if nudged by an unseen hand. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere left to go. The scratching started next. Not at the window this time, at the door. Slow at first, like fingernails dragging down wood. Then harder, faster, something clawing to get in. I pressed myself against the far wall, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. "Go away," I whispered, even though I knew words meant nothing here. The phone lit up again. Another message. You're already ours. That broke something in me. I lunged for the lamp, yanked the cord from the wall and hurled it at the door. The crash echoed through the room, but the scratching didn't stop. It only grew louder. Then, suddenly, silence. The quiet was worse than the noise. My pulse thundered in my ears as I crept toward the door. Slowly, I lowered myself and peered through the narrow crack at the bottom. A shadow passed across it. Too big, too tall to be human. My breath caught. The doorknob rattled. Slowly, deliberately, it began to turn. I stumbled back, eyes locked on the knob. My phone buzzed again. Against every ounce of willpower, I looked. It's behind you. I spun so fast I nearly fell. The room was empty. Empty except for the mirror above the dresser. And in that mirror, I wasn't alone. A figure stood behind me in the reflection. Tall, hunched, its face a blur of shifting shadows. Its long fingers hovered just above my shoulder, though when I turned in real life, the space was empty. I whipped back to the mirror. The thing was closer now, its blurred face almost touching mine. I smashed the mirror with my fist, glass exploding across the carpet. Pain sliced through my hand, but I didn't care. I dropped to the floor, gasping, tears burning my eyes. That's when I heard a voice, not from outside, not from the phone, but right there in the room. You shouldn't have come here. I looked up. The motel owner's wife was standing in the doorway. I hadn't even heard the door open. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in years. "What is happening to me?" I begged. She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. "It's the hollowing," she whispered. "It takes and it takes. Sometimes whole families, sometimes just one. It started before any of us were born. We live with it. We survive around it. But you..." She shook her head. "You woke it up." I pressed my bleeding hand against my chest. "Why me?" "Because you looked," she said simply. "Because you listened." Her words sent a chill through me deeper than the night itself. She moved closer, kneeling beside me. For a moment, I thought she might help, might know some way out. But then her voice dropped to a rasp. "It wants to know your name." My stomach turned. I shook my head violently. "No, I won't." Her eyes snapped up dark and hollow, and in that moment, she didn't look human anymore. She hissed through clenched teeth. "Tell it!" I scrambled away from her, knocking over the chair, blood dripping across the carpet. "Stay away from me!" Her body convulsed once, like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. Then she collapsed to the floor, motionless. The humming stopped. The room fell silent again, except for my ragged breathing. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat with my back to the wall, glass shards digging into my skin, watching the door, waiting for it to move again. When the sun rose, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd survived the worst of it. But then my phone buzzed one last time. One new message. "Tonight, we feast." By the time the sun set, I already knew I wasn't getting out of Ashford alive. Not really. Maybe my body would, but not me. The message on my phone haunted me all day. "Tonight, we feast." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I spent the morning wandering Main Street, hoping daylight might make things feel normal. But the people looked different now. Everyone moved slower, eyes downcast, like they already knew what was coming. No one met my gaze. No one spoke. Even Anna didn't show up at the diner. By afternoon, the sky had darkened, clouds rolling in thick and heavy. A storm was coming. Though the air was dry, the silence thicker than before. I ducked into the library again, desperate for answers. The librarian, that frail old man, was waiting as if he knew I'd return. Without a word, he led me to a back room, unlocked a cabinet, and pulled out a leather-bound book that smelled of dust and age. The cover was cracked, the pages filled with spidery handwriting. "It's been written about before," he whispered. "Every generation, someone tries to keep record, but it never changes. The hollowing takes who it wants." My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Drawings of tall, shadowed figures with too many limbs. Accounts of voices in the night, families leaving food at the edge of the forest to keep the town safe for another season. Whole entries crossed out violently, as if the writer regretted even putting the words to paper. One page caught my eye. The date was 1911. It read, "When they chant, it is already too late. The chosen cannot run, cannot hide. The town knows this. The town accepts this." I snapped the book shut, bile rising in my throat. So they're just letting this happen? Everyone here? The old man's eyes glistened with tears. "If the hollowing takes a few, it leaves the rest. That's the bargain. It's always been the bargain." I staggered back. "You mean they're okay with this? With sacrificing people?" His silence was the only answer I needed. When I left the library, the storm finally broke. Rain lashed the streets, thunder rattling the windows, lightning split the sky, illuminating the woods in jagged flashes. And in those flashes, I saw them. Figures, dozens, standing at the tree line, motionless, waiting. By the time night fell, the motel felt like a coffin. I shoved the dresser against the door, taped the curtains shut, and sat in the center of the room clutching a broken shard of glass like it could save me. At exactly 2:17 a.m., it began. The humming, louder than ever, so loud the mirrorless dresser shook. My phone lit up, though I hadn't touched it. A video started playing on its own. It was me. Me, sitting in that same room, clutching the shard of glass, eyes wide with terror. Except in the video, something moved behind me, a tall shadow, its long hands reaching closer. I dropped the phone like it burned me. The humming turned into chanting, deep, guttural, layered with too many voices to count. The walls pulsed with it. My ears bled. Then came the pounding at the door, not scratching this time. Pounding, heavy enough to rattle the dresser across the floor inch by inch. Dust rained from the ceiling with each blow. "No," I whispered, rocking back and forth. "Not me, not me." The pounding stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse. I thought maybe it was over, and then the window exploded inward. Shards of glass sprayed across the room as a pale arm snaked inside, fingers too long, bending at impossible angles. It clawed at the curtains, ripping them down, letting the storm's light pour in. I screamed and stumbled back, the shard of mirror shaking in my hand. Lightning lit the sky, and for a fraction of a second I saw its face. Not a blur this time, not shadows. A hollowed, sunken face, stretched impossibly wide, its mouth a gaping hole that moved with the chant. And its eyes, those eyes were empty sockets glowing faintly from within. It pulled harder, its body squeezing through the shattered frame, bone and skin cracking as if reshaping itself just to get inside. And then, just as it was halfway through, the motel door burst open. Anna stood there, drenched from the storm, holding a shotgun. Her voice cut through the chanting as she screamed, "Get away from him!" She fired. The blast shook the room, the shadow jerking backward into the night with a scream that wasn't human. The humming stopped. The silence returned. Anna lowered the shotgun, her hands shaking. She looked at me with eyes that were more terrified than mine. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Killing it doesn't end it. You've only made it angry." Anna stood in the ruined doorway, rain dripping from her hair, the shotgun trembling in her grip. Her words echoed in the silence. "You've only made it angry." I didn't want to believe her. I wanted to believe that what she'd blown apart was the thing that had stalked me, that it was finished. But the look in her eyes told me otherwise. She stepped inside, glass crunching beneath her boots. "We can't stay here. It knows this place now." I staggered to my feet, still clutching the shard of mirror, though my hand throbbed with cuts. "Where do we go?" Her gaze flicked toward the woods. For a moment, her face hardened like she was ready to say "into the trees," but she stopped herself. Instead, she whispered, "Somewhere it can't hear us." We left the motel behind, the storm easing into a drizzle. The streets were deserted, every window shuttered, every light off. The whole town had gone to ground. Anna led me down back roads until we reached a sagging farmhouse on the edge of town. She pushed open the creaking door and ushered me inside. The air smelled of dust and rot. Cobwebs clung to the corners. The furniture was draped in sheets like no one had lived there in decades. But the walls were thick, the windows boarded, and for once the silence felt like shelter. Anna lit a single candle on the table. Her hands shook as she struck the match. In the dim glow, she looked more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "You need to know what you're dealing with," she said softly. I sank into a chair, every nerve still buzzing. "Then tell me." She stared at the flame for a long moment, then began. "My brother Matthew was the first to hear it. Same as you. The humming, the chanting. He told me about the eyes in the woods, about the scratching at his window. I thought he was losing his mind. But then one night he didn't come home." Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "We searched for days. The whole town did. Finally, they found his shoes at the tree line. Just the shoes, nothing else. My parents said it was over, that I had to let him go. But I couldn't. I kept going back to the woods. I thought maybe I'd find him. Maybe he was still alive." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "And I did see him. At least I thought I did. He was standing between the trees, barefoot, calling my name. I ran to him, but the sheriff pulled me back. He told me it wasn't Matthew anymore, that once it takes them, they don't come back the same." I felt sick, bile rising in my throat. "So you're saying those things, those figures, they used to be people?" Anna nodded slowly. "People the hollowing chose. People the town allowed it to take. That's the bargain." Her words struck me like a blow. "Bargain?" She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The town survives because it gives the hollowing what it wants. It doesn't take everyone, just enough to feed it. That's why no one stops it, why no one talks. If it chooses you, you're already dead. The rest of us, we're left behind to keep the cycle going." I shook my head violently. "That's insane! You're saying everyone here knows about this? That they let it happen?" Her silence was answer enough. I stood, pacing, my chest tight. "So, what am I supposed to do? Just wait to be taken, be one of them?" Anna looked up at me, her face hollow in the candlelight. "You could run, but you won't get far. You could fight, but you'll only make it worse. The only thing left is to decide how much you're willing to give up." Her words hung heavy in the air. My hands trembled. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the candle flickered violently. The flames stretched tall, then blew out, plunging us into darkness. The humming started again, not outside this time, inside the farmhouse. Low at first, then swelling, filling every corner. Anna grabbed my arm, her nails digging deep. "It's here," she hissed. The walls groaned, dust rained from the ceiling. The boards over the windows rattled, like something was pressing against them. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for light. The screen lit up, but no messages this time, just the camera app, open on its own. And on the screen, clear as day, standing right behind us, Matthew, barefoot, hollow-eyed, his mouth moving with the chant. Anna screamed. Anna's scream ripped through the farmhouse, raw and broken, but Matthew didn't even flinch. He just stood there in the glow of my phone screen, his skin pale and grey, his eyes dark pits that swallowed the light. His lips moved in that awful chant, the words too guttural, too twisted to be human. I spun around expecting to see nothing, some glitch in the phone, but he was there. He was really there, only a few steps away. Anna stumbled back, clutching at her chest. No, that's not him. That's not my brother." But her voice shook with doubt. Matthew took a step forward. The air in the room seemed to collapse around him, pressing in on us. The boards over the windows buckled outward, like the whole house was breathing with him. I raised the shard of mirror, not even knowing why. For a moment, his face warped in its reflection, twisting into something monstrous. Jagged teeth, skin peeling, eyes burning like coals. But when I lowered it, he looked almost normal again. Almost. "Anna," he croaked, his voice gravel and ash. "Come home." Tears streaked down her face. She shook her head violently, but she didn't move. Her body swayed, like she was being pulled toward him by an invisible current. I grabbed her arm. "Don't listen. It's not him. It's using him." She didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on Matthew, her lips trembling. He remembers me. He knows my name. Maybe he's still in there." Matthew stretched out a hand. His nails were black, cracked, too long. "One step," he whispered. "That's all it takes." The humming grew louder, vibrating through the floorboards. My teeth hurt from the sound, my vision blurred, and for a terrifying moment, I felt myself leaning toward him too. Then I remembered what Anna had told me. The hollowing doesn't give people back, not the same. I yanked her away with all my strength, sending both of us crashing into the table. The candle tipped, scattering hot wax across the wood. The flames sputtered back to life for a second before dying again, plunging us into shadows. When I looked back, Matthew was closer, too close, his face inches from mine. And then he smiled. "You'll both belong to it soon," he hissed. His breath was ice, reeking of soil and rot. "It already marked you." Before I could react, his hand shot forward, grabbing my wrist where the cuts from the mirror bled. His fingers dug into the wound, and a burning sensation ripped through me like fire spreading under my skin. I screamed and tore free, the shards slipping from my grip and clattering to the floor. My blood smeared across his palm, and his eyes lit with a sick, hungry glow. Anna finally snapped out of her trance. She lunged for the shotgun, still propped against the wall, and swung it up with shaking hands. "Let him go," she cried, though her voice broke halfway. Matthew turned to her, tilting his head, that unnatural grin stretching wider. "You wouldn't hurt me, Anna. You couldn't." Her whole body trembled. She aimed, then faltered, sobs racking her chest. "Do it," I shouted, clutching my wrist, the burning still crawling up my arm. "It's not him anymore." Matthew moved fast, faster than anything that should be human. One moment he was standing, the next he was inches from her, his hand on the barrel of the shotgun, pushing it down. "Together," he whispered, his voice almost tender, "like when we were kids, just come with me." Anna's knees buckled. For a second, I thought she was going to give in. Then her face twisted with rage and grief. With a scream that was more animal than human, she wrenched the shotgun free and fired. The blast shook the whole house. When the smoke cleared, Matthew was gone. No body, no blood, just silence. Anna collapsed to the floor, the shotgun clattering beside her. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I staggered over, clutching my burning wrist, my vision swimming. "It's not over," I whispered. "He'll come back, you know he will." Her tear-streaked face lifted, hollow with despair. "It already has him, and now it has you." The boards rattled again, harder this time. The humming surged back, louder than ever, as if the house itself was chanting. We weren't alone anymore. By the time midnight rolled around, the farmhouse no longer felt like shelter. It had become something alive. Breathing, watching, waiting. The boards over the windows groaned, bending as if inhaling, then snapping back like lungs exhaling. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling with each tremor. The walls seemed to pulse, expanding and contracting, making the room feel smaller, tighter, like it was trying to crush us. Anna and I huddled in the corner, shotgun between us, shard of glass in my other hand. The humming had returned, louder than anything I'd experienced. It filled the house, shook the floor, rattled the window frames. My ears rang so loud I thought they'd burst. Then came the whispers, soft at first, impossibly faint, like a crowd of people murmuring just out of hearing. Then the voices grew clearer, overlapping, chanting names. Our names, my name, Anna's name. Every syllable dragged across my skin, cutting into my brain. I slammed my hands over my ears. "Stop!" I shouted. "Stop it!" The walls didn't respond. Instead, the floor beneath us trembled. A crack snaked across the boards, widening, twisting. One by one, the walls seemed to tilt inward, the corners of the room bending like the inside of a mouth. The farmhouse had become a trap, a funnel, drawing us toward its center. Anna grabbed my arm. "It's trying to swallow us," she gasped. I glanced at the shard of glass, desperate for anything that might help, but when I lifted it, the reflection was wrong. The room behind us seemed endless in the mirror, stretching into dark corridors, filled with countless pale figures. Faces contorted with silent screams, all reaching toward us. The hollowing wasn't just outside anymore, it had come inside. The whispering voices merged into one low chant, repeating a single phrase over and over. "Come, come, come." I tried to run, but the floor felt sticky, clinging to my feet like it was alive. Anna struggled beside me, trying to drag me toward the door, but it wasn't just the floor. The walls themselves pressed inward, narrowing the space. The ceiling creaked, threatening to collapse. Then the windows shattered simultaneously, the sound deafening. Pale arms reached through, stretching impossibly long, hands clawing at the floorboards, the ceiling, anything they could touch. The hollowing was feeding on the house itself, using it to trap us. I screamed and swung the shard wildly. It cut through one of the hands and it vanished with a wet, sucking sound. But for every one we destroyed, 3 more appeared. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and decay. Anna grabbed my arm again. "We have to get to the attic," she shouted. "It can't reach us there." I nodded, terrified. We scrambled toward the staircase, the walls bending around us, windows bleeding shadowy fingers. Every step was a battle. The floor shifted beneath our weight, trying to throw us off balance. When we reached the attic, the ceiling was low, the space cramped, but for the first time in hours, it felt like safety. The chanting was muffled here, the shadows slower to appear. I sank to the floor, gasping for breath, clutching the shard of glass like a lifeline. Anna sat beside me, shotgun trembling in her hands. For a few moments, silence reigned, not perfect but merciful compared to the chaos below. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. The walls of the attic were lined with old portraits. Faces of families, generations past, each frozen in time with eyes wide in fear. Some faces were familiar. Some resembled people we'd passed on the street earlier in Ashford. Anna traced a finger over one of the portraits. Her voice was barely a whisper. They were chosen, everyone in this house, in this town, marked by it. I shivered. "So it's been here all along, feeding, waiting." She nodded, eyes hollow. "And now it wants us." The chanting started again, slower this time, deliberate, as if it had located our hiding place. Shadows moved at the edges of the attic, gathering. I gripped the shard tighter. Anna cocked the shotgun, but even she didn't seem sure it would help. Lightning flashed through the broken windows, illuminating a wall of pale faces pressing against the boards, mouths moving in silent screams. The hollowing was patient, it was inevitable, and we were trapped. The shadows in the attic began to move, twisting and stretching, converging into shapes too tall and wrong to be human. Faces pressed against each other, mouths open in silent screams, fingers clawing at the air as if the room itself had become a living creature. The hollowing was no longer just a presence, it was manifesting, taking shape in the very space around us. Anna gripped the shotgun tighter, her knuckles white. I held the shard of mirror like it was the only thing keeping me alive. For a moment, I thought sheer panic might shield us, but the shadows ignored our fear. One of the shapes emerged first. A tall figure, hunched, faceless, its body shifting like smoke and shadow. Its fingers, too long and thin, reached toward us. When it spoke, the voice came not from the shape, but inside my head, a rasping whisper that made my skull throb. "You belong to us," Anna screamed, firing the shotgun blindly. The figure flinched, smoke and shadow trailing from where the bullets hit, but it didn't stop. 3 more emerged behind it, each worse than the last. Twisted, faceless humanoids that moved like liquid, bending around each other, converging on our corner of the attic. I raised the shard of mirror again, holding it in front of me like a shield. In its reflection, the figures distorted, appearing almost human, faces of people we'd known, the missing, the lost, all staring back with hollow eyes. The hollowing was showing us what it had consumed. One figure lunged, its fingers stretched impossibly long, grazing my arm. A searing pain tore through me like fire beneath the skin. I cried out, swinging the mirror. The figure recoiled, but not gone. The others pressed closer, their voices inside my head overlapping into a deafening chorus of names, of calls, of laughter and screams. Anna grabbed my hand. "We have to fight it together," she yelled. Her voice was almost drowned out by the chanting that vibrated through the floor, the walls, the very air. I nodded, though terror gripped every inch of me. "We don't have a choice." We swung and struck, both mirror shard and shotgun in motion. The shadows dissipated in ragged clouds, only to reform moments later, more numerous, more insistent. Each time one was wounded, 2 replaced it. The attic had become a storm, a cage of moving darkness that twisted and writhed around us. I noticed the portraits again. The frozen faces on the walls seemed to shimmer, and for a brief second, I could see faint outlines of the hollowing inside them. Trapped, consumed, waiting. A thought struck me. Maybe the portraits were its prison. Maybe the house itself was a cage for the lost, a feeding ground it could control. I shouted to Anna, "The portraits! Maybe they're its weakness." She hesitated, fear in her eyes, then nodded. "If we can drive it back into them, maybe it'll get trapped again." We ran to the walls, smashing mirrors, swinging the shard to direct the shadows toward the portraits. The figures resisted, clawing, twisting, screaming inside our minds. My arm burned where one had touched me. Anna's hands shook with the shotgun, but her aim was true, pushing the shapes into the wall like they had nowhere else to go. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the attic in bursts. I could see the shadows suck toward the portraits, twisting in fury, the faceless forms contorting before vanishing into the painted faces. The chanting became frantic, desperate, then stopped. Silence. For a moment, the room was empty. We collapsed, trembling, soaked in sweat and rain, staring at the portraits. The hollowing was gone, or at least trapped for now. Anna leaned back, gasping. "It's not over," she whispered. "It never ends. But, for now, it's contained." I sank to the floor, shaking, my hands trembling as I held the shard. We survived. But what now? How do we live knowing it's still here? Her eyes were hollow but resolute. We survive like everyone else. We remember, and maybe if someone else comes, we can stop it again. I looked at the portraits, at the twisted faces frozen in fear. I knew this was just a temporary reprieve. The hollowing would wait, patient, eternal, for the next soul to hear its call. The storm passed, leaving Ashford drenched and silent. When Anna and I finally descended from the attic, the farmhouse felt empty, hollow, as if it had exhaled all the terror we'd survived. Outside, the streets were deserted, the few remaining lights flickering in the drizzle. The town felt like a ghost itself, waiting, holding its breath, holding. Anna and I walked in silence, the echoes of the hollowing still ringing in my ears. Every shuttered window, every darkened doorway seemed alive, watching. We both knew the hollowing was still in the house, trapped for now, but nothing in Ashford felt safe. Nothing would ever feel safe again. We returned to the diner, hoping for signs of life. The neon sign buzzed weakly, and inside, the empty booths whispered of abandoned lives. Anna led me to the back, where the old man had waited for generations. His face was pale but resigned. "You made it through," he said quietly. Not many do. I shook my head. Through what? Through him? Through whatever that was? He sighed, a long, hollow sound. The hollowing. The town has always fed it. Every generation, someone hears it, someone sees it, someone is taken, and somehow the rest of us live. That's the bargain. I swallowed hard, staring at the floor. But the town, they just let it happen. They survive because it chooses, he said simply. You survive because you didn't let it take you completely. But it will never stop, not truly. I felt hollow inside, the weight of the town's secret pressing down on me. Every glance at the empty streets, every shadowed alley whispered the same thing. The hollowing waits. It always waits. Anna led me back to the farmhouse to gather our things. The attic was quiet, the portraits hanging like silent witnesses. The air smelled faintly of damp earth, but the shadows were gone. For now. Can we ever leave this town? I asked, the question tasting bitter. Anna shook her head. It doesn't matter. It doesn't let people go. Ashford is sticky. It keeps what it wants. I nodded, though I didn't fully understand. Part of me wanted to leave, to drive as far as possible, to pretend none of this had happened. But another part of me, the part that had seen the figures, that had heard the chanting in the walls, knew there was no escape. We packed quietly, careful not to disturb the silence of the house. Every movement felt heavy, deliberate, like the walls themselves were judging us. I glanced at the portraits one last time. The hollowing's victims stared back, frozen in their fear, trapped in paint and plaster. The drive out of Ashford was unnerving. Every bend in the road, every stretch of forest felt alive. Shadows seemed to linger at the edge of the trees. I kept glancing at Anna. She drove with grim determination, her eyes scanning the road ahead and the trees behind. I don't think it's over, I said finally, my voice low. It's never over, she answered. Her hands tightened on the wheel. We only live with it. Only survive it. The town faded behind us, streetlights blinking out one by one, the woods swallowing the edges of the road. But I knew deep down that Ashford was watching, waiting, patient, eternal. That night in the motel we found just outside town, I tried to sleep. But even in the safety of four walls and a locked door, I could hear the faintest hum. A low vibration that made my teeth ache, just enough to remind me that Ashford and the hollowing were never far away. Anna slept beside me, but her breathing was shallow, restless. I watched the shadows shift across the ceiling, listening to the whispers that rose from the dark corners of the room. I didn't move. I didn't close my eyes. The hollowing had been temporarily contained, but I knew it would return. It would always return. And I understood for the first time the truth of the old man's words. Survival in Ashford wasn't about leaving. It was about enduring. Living even when the horror waits just beyond the walls, in the trees, in the silence between the hums. We had survived, but we were changed. Forever. We thought leaving Ashford meant leaving the hollowing behind. We were wrong. For the first few days, the road was empty, the world normal enough to fool us. But at night, the hum returned. Faint at first, distant, like it was somewhere just beyond the horizon. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, that leaving the town had freed us. Anna didn't even try. She stayed alert, her eyes scanning shadows, hands always on the shotgun. It started small. At first, the whispers came through the phone, static at the edges of the line, voices calling names, soft and cold. I would grab the phone, throw it across the room, only for it to light up again, repeating the chant, "Come, come, come." Then the dreams began. Every night, I'd see Ashford, empty streets, the cracked diner windows, the forest at the edge of town. The figures were there, lining the roads, faceless, reaching, and Matthew, always Matthew. His hollow eyes followed me, his hands stretched toward me, pulling me back into the town I had tried to escape. Anna had them too. I could see it in her eyes when morning came, the dark circles, the way she flinched at shadows that weren't there. Neither of us spoke of it, not yet. Words seemed powerless against what we had seen, what we had survived. Then came the first sighting. We were driving along a deserted highway when I saw it in the rearview mirror. A figure standing at the edge of the trees, tall and pale, faceless, unmoving. At first I thought it was a trick of the rain, the fog, or my own exhaustion. But it didn't disappear when we passed. It stayed there, waiting, watching. I slammed on the brakes. Anna swerved, heart hammering. "What is it?" she shouted, breath fogging in the cold night air. "It's following us," I said, voice tight with fear. "It didn't stay in Ashford. It knows where we went." Her hands gripped the wheel like she could crush it. "It can't be. It's contained. The house." I shook my head. "It's patient. It's waiting. It doesn't need to be here to find us." We drove faster. The dark highway stretched endlessly before us, the fog thickening as if guiding us back to Ashford. Every reflective surface, the windshield, the side mirrors, even the windows of abandoned buildings glinted with movement, pale figures in the shadows, reaching, waiting. By the next night, it escalated. The humming was no longer distant. It resonated inside the car, inside our skulls. The windshield fogged from nowhere, and through the condensation, I could see faces, faces of the missing, faces of Matthew, all pressing against us, mouths moving in the silent chant. Anna stopped the car. "We can't outrun this," she said, voice trembling. "It doesn't need roads, it doesn't need distance. It's in us now. We carry it." I understood then what she meant. The hollowing didn't just live in Ashford. It lived in the fear it left behind, in the minds of those who survived, in the blood that had been touched by it, and it wanted more. That night, in the woods near the roadside, we made a camp, trying to ignore the shadows dancing just beyond the firelight. The whispering never stopped. We didn't sleep. Every snap of a branch, every rustle of leaves made our hearts jump. And then, just as dawn approached, a shape emerged from the trees. Matthew, or what had once been him, stepped into the firelight, faceless, pale, silent. We screamed. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there waiting, and then more appeared, each figure taller, darker, faceless, filling the woods. Anna aimed the shotgun, I held the shard of glass, but we both knew it wouldn't be enough. Not really. And I understood then that the hollowing would never let us go. Not truly. The night air was thick with mist and the scent of wet earth. Shadows stretched from the trees, moving of their own accord, merging into shapes that no human eyes should ever see. The hollowing had followed us here, beyond Ashford, beyond reason, and now it surrounded us. Every figure was faceless, every hand reaching, every movement silent but deliberate. Anna crouched beside me, shotgun trembling in her hands. "We can't let it touch us," she whispered, voice tight with fear. "We have to fight. Together." I nodded, clutching the shard of mirror, my arms still burned from past scratches, my breath ragged. "We survive this, or we die trying." From the edge of the firelight, a shape detached itself from the rest. Matthew, or what was left of him. His hollow eyes glowed faintly, and his mouth opened in the silent chant, reverberating in my skull. The other figures pulsed around him, moving closer like a tide of smoke. I lifted the shard, holding it up between us and him. The mirror reflected not just his figure, but the infinite faces trapped inside it, the hollowing's victims, their eyes pleading. My heart pounded. Maybe this was its weakness. Anna fired the shotgun into the mass. The figures staggered, blurred, but did not stop. I swung the mirror, guiding the shapes into the reflection. Shadows twisted, clawed, and screamed inside the glass, the sound muffled but horrible. They writhed, struggling against their imprisonment. Matthew stepped forward, reaching for Anna. I swung the shard violently. For a moment it worked, his figure distorted, elongated, flickering between the human and the monstrous. But he didn't vanish. Not yet. The hollowing's chanting intensified, a chorus of voices inside our heads, screaming, whispering, pulling at our minds. I felt my vision blur, my body sag, the world bending as if the forest itself were alive, trying to consume us. Anna's voice cut through the chaos. "Now!" We both struck simultaneously, mirror and shotgun in unison. The shards of glass reflected the firelight across the figures, trapping them in a kaleidoscope of shadows. The hollowing shrieked in a way that was not human, not even alive, a sound that made the trees shiver. Matthew's hollowed eyes met mine for a brief second. I saw something inside them, a flicker of the brother he used to be. And then he disappeared, pulled back into the mirror along with the other shapes. The forest went silent. The chanting stopped. The mist thinned. We sank to the ground, gasping, trembling, soaked in rain and sweat. Anna's hands shook so hard she dropped the shotgun. I dropped the shard of mirror, watching as its reflection shimmered faintly, but remained intact. For a moment, it was over. But I knew it wasn't. The hollowing was patient, eternal, waiting for the next whisper, the next soul, the next mistake. It was not gone, only contained, for now. Anna leaned back against a tree, shivering. "It won't forget us," she said quietly. "It never does." I nodded, exhausted, staring at the empty woods. "Then we remember," I said. "We survive, and we remember so that the next ones, whoever comes after, might stand a chance." The fire dwindled, leaving only faint embers. The forest seemed calm again, the air still, the mist gone. But the memory of those hollow eyes, that infinite chant, that unbearable presence lingered like smoke in my mind. We didn't sleep that night. We didn't move until the first light of dawn, when the forest seemed less oppressive, the road less menacing. We walked in silence, carrying our fear like armor, knowing that Ashford and the hollowing were never far behind. Even as the highway stretched before us, empty and sunlit, I felt the faintest hum in my chest. The reminder that we had survived, yes, but at what cost? And that some part of the hollowing would always be with us. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a pale gold light on the road ahead. Anna and I walked side by side, exhausted, bruised, and hollowed in ways that no one could ever see. The forest that had followed us seemed quiet now, but I knew better. I had felt it, the faint pulse beneath my skin. The hollowing never truly leaves. It waits, patient and eternal, for the next soul to wander too close. We stopped at a roadside cafe, the smell of coffee grounding us, a small comfort after the nights we had endured. The people inside moved with the normality of life, unaware of the darkness that had pursued us. I envied them for a moment, for their ignorance. Anna sipped her coffee in silence. I watched her hands shake, fingers tracing the rim of the cup. We didn't talk about what happened, not really, but the memory of those hollow eyes, the infinite chant, the twisted figures in the mirror, all lingered. The hollowing had marked us in ways we couldn't undo, in ways we couldn't forget. I took a deep breath and spoke. We survived, but Ashford, it's still there, waiting, watching. Anna nodded, her gaze fixed on the street beyond the cafe. "It's patient," she said softly. "It doesn't need to hurry. It only needs time." We finished our coffee, paid the bill, and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, a promise of life continuing, of the world going on, indifferent to the horrors we had faced. Yet even as we walked down the sidewalk, I felt the faintest hum in the back of my mind, a reminder that the hollowing was never far. I thought of the portraits in the farmhouse attic, the faces of those it had claimed, the trapped echoes of souls frozen in paint. And I understood that this was the bargain the town had made. Survival through sacrifice. We had survived, yes, but we carried a piece of the hollowing with us. Its presence was stitched into our memories, our fears, our very existence. Anna broke the silence. We tell people, don't we? I shook my head slowly. Who would believe us? And even if they did, it doesn't matter. It's patient. It doesn't care about warnings. It only waits. She nodded, eyes hardening with determination. Then we live, we endure, and we remember. I looked at her and realized that survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about holding on to our humanity, about facing the memory of the hollowing every day without letting it consume us. It was about remembering the terror so we could endure the long nights that might come again. We walked in silence through the empty streets of the next town, the sunlight breaking through the clouds, and for a moment, life seemed ordinary again. But deep inside, I knew the truth. Ashford and the hollowing were not just a place or a single event. They were a force, eternal and patient, and we were forever bound to its memory. As we reached the edge of town, I glanced back at the horizon. The forest beyond the road seemed darker than the day before, as if it had absorbed all the shadows of the nights we survived. The hollowing was waiting, patient and inevitable, and someday it would call again. But for now, we were alive. And surviving, we had learned, was enough. Thank you, listeners, for following our story. Remember, some places hide more than they seem, and some horrors wait patiently for those who wander too close. If you enjoyed this tale, like and subscribe for more stories that will keep you awake at night. Keep your lights on and your windows locked, because you never know what might be watching from the shadows.